Manager fires waitress for feeding street child with leftovers. The next day, the restaurant. Ashley Johnson wiped tears from her face as she walked through the streets of downtown San Diego, carrying only a bag with her personal belongings. At 32 years old, a single mother of 2 young daughters, she had just lost the job that had supported her family for nearly 6 years. It all happened when manager Richard Wilson caught her handing a plate of food to Jimmy, an 8-year-old boy who showed up every night at the door of Homestead Kitchen. The man shouted in front of all the customers that she was stealing food and damaging the restaurant's reputation. Without giving her a chance to explain, he fired her on the spot, ordering her to leave immediately. What Richard didn't know was that Mrs. Eleanor Thompson, the 73-year-old owner, was in her office upstairs, watching the whole scene through the security cameras. The woman stayed awake all night, haunted by painful memories of her own childhood, when she begged for bread at bakery doors. Meanwhile, Jimmy ran through the neighborhood streets telling everyone he met about the injustice he had witnessed. The boy, who lived with his sick grandmother in a tiny room at the back of a boarding house, had grown fond of Ashley, who always treated him with kindness and dignity. The next morning, something unusual began to happen. The first sign was when the Brown family, loyal customers for over 15 years, called to cancel their Sunday lunch reservation. Then came the Miller brothers, owners of a nearby clothing store, who also cancelled their regular lunch orders for employees. Richard didn't understand what was happening until he received an angry call from Mrs. Barbara Williams, a long-time customer who had frequented the restaurant since its opening. The woman said she had heard from Jimmy about what happened the night before and was outraged by how the employee had been treated. The manager tried to downplay the situation, explaining there were rules to follow, but Mrs. Barbara interrupted, saying she would never set foot in that place again. Within 2 hours, 12 more customers called to cancel their usual reservations. From her office, Mrs. Eleanor watched Richard grow increasingly nervous as he took phone calls. She knew the ambitious man she had hired 2 years ago all too well, always promising to increase the restaurant's profits. Something about him had never inspired her full trust, but the numbers seemed to justify his presence. Determined to investigate further, the owner went down to the kitchen and spoke with Margie, the cook who had worked there for 15 years. The 58-year-old woman hesitated at first, but eventually revealed things Mrs. Eleanor never imagined. Margie said Richard demanded kickbacks from suppliers in exchange for contracts, threatening to switch companies if he didn't get his cut. On top of that, he had implemented a strict inventory control system that prohibited any waste, even if it meant helping those in need. The situation grew even more tense when Jason, the 24-year-old waiter, revealed that Richard deducted money from employees' paychecks for any dish returned or complained about by customers, even when the mistake wasn't theirs. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, back to the story. Mrs. Eleanor felt her blood boil as she heard these revelations. She had built that restaurant with so much love and dedication, following the principles she learned from her Irish immigrant parents, and now she discovered it had been turned into something completely different from what she had dreamed. That afternoon, the owner made a courageous decision. She got Ashley's address from Human Resources and went to her home on the outskirts of San Diego. The waitress lived in a modest 3-room house where she raised her 2 daughters alone, Kaylee, 12, and Sophie, 7. When Ashley opened the door and saw Mrs. Eleanor standing there, she couldn't hide her surprise. The owner asked to come in, and they talked for over 2 hours. Ashley shared her story. She had gotten pregnant very young with Kaylee. The father disappeared, and years later she got involved with another man who also left her when Sophie was born. She had worked at Homestead Kitchen since Kaylee was 6, starting as a cleaning assistant and being promoted to waitress because of her dedication and charm with customers. The pay wasn't much, but she managed to support her girls with dignity. Mrs. Eleanor was moved to learn that Ashley had always dreamed of studying business, but never had the chance because she needed to work. The young woman also admitted that Jimmy reminded her of her own daughters when they were little, which was why she couldn't bear to see him hungry outside the restaurant. The owner then told her about her investigation and the discoveries about Richard's practices. Ashley was shocked, but many things started to make sense, like the change in the work environment over the past few months and the constant pressure to sell more dishes and drinks. Meanwhile, at the restaurant, Richard was facing an increasingly complicated situation. Besides the cancellations, some employees had begun openly questioning his decisions. Margie started serving larger portions to customers, defying the cost-cutting instructions. The manager tried to intimidate the cook, threatening to fire her, but she shot back that she had 15 years with the restaurant and knew all the kitchen's secrets. Without her, the place wouldn't last a week running properly. The tension escalated when Jimmy showed up at the restaurant's door again. This time, Jason stepped out and handed the boy a plate of food, directly defying Richard's orders. The manager flew into a rage and ordered the waiter back inside, but other employees came out to support their co-worker. Richard realized he was losing control and decided to take drastic action. He called a human resources firm specializing in terminations, planning to fire all the employees rebelling against his authority. What he didn't know was that Mrs. Eleanor had installed microphones in certain areas of the restaurant after suspecting his activities. The conversation was recorded and reached the owner's ears, leaving her outraged at the manager's coldness and disrespect toward people who had dedicated years of their lives to the business. The next morning, Mrs. Eleanor arrived early and called a meeting with all the staff. Richard tried to take control, but the owner cut him off, saying she had important things to say. In a firm voice, she revealed everything she had uncovered about the manager's actions. The employees were shocked to learn about the corruption schemes and the threats they had been facing. Richard tried to defend himself, denying the accusations and attempting to discredit those who had spoken out. That's when Mrs. Eleanor played the recordings and presented the documents she had found in his office. Proof of supplier overbilling, embezzlement of maintenance funds, and even falsified financial reports. Cornered, Richard changed tactics and tried to convince Mrs. Eleanor that his actions were necessary to keep the restaurant competitive. He argued that the competition was unfair and that drastic measures were needed to survive. The owner listened in silence and then responded with a phrase that struck everyone present. "I'd rather close this restaurant than betray the values my parents taught me. Success built on exploitation and dishonesty isn't success. It's failure in disguise." Richard was fired on the spot and escorted out of the establishment. Before leaving, he tried to threaten Mrs. Eleanor by claiming he knew secrets about the restaurant and could harm the business. The owner didn't back down and said she was prepared to face any consequences of her decisions. With the manager gone, Mrs. Eleanor announced that Ashley would be invited back, not just as a waitress, but as the general supervisor of customer service. The offer included a significant raise and the chance to implement her ideas for improving service. The staff applauded the decision, but Ashley hesitated. The public humiliation still stung deeply, and she worried customers might see her differently after the incident. Plus, she'd received job offers from other establishments that had heard about her situation. Mrs. Eleanor understood her hesitation and simply asked her to think about the offer. She revealed she planned to launch a social program at the restaurant where unsold meals would go to those in need, and she wanted Ashley to coordinate it. The idea touched the young woman's heart, but she asked for a few days to decide. She needed to talk to her daughters and carefully consider the future she wanted to build for her family. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. While Ashley weighed her decision, Richard wasn't idle. Furious about his firing, he reached out to contacts at City Hall and the health department to try to damage the restaurant. He spread rumors about hygiene issues and paperwork irregularities, hoping to force the place to shut down. The first inspection came just 2 days later. Agents checked every corner of the restaurant, reviewed documents, and spoke with employees. To Richard's frustration, they found no violations. Homestead Kitchen was in perfect condition, with all paperwork in order. Mrs. Eleanor immediately suspected who was behind the inspection. She spoke with a friend at City Hall and learned Richard had filed anonymous complaints. Unshaken, she decided it was time to fight back. Through her restaurant industry contacts, she discovered Richard had been fired from his previous job for similar reasons. He had a history of conflicts with staff and questionable management practices. She discreetly shared this information with other business owners in the sector. Meanwhile, Ashley and Jimmy's story began spreading on local social media. Someone had filmed the moment she was fired, and the video went viral in the San Diego area. Messages of support for the waitress and criticism of the manager's behavior multiplied quickly. The attention sparked an unexpected wave of solidarity. People started showing up at the restaurant specifically to hear the story and show their support. Many asked about Ashley and were disappointed to learn she hadn't returned yet. Margie, temporarily overseeing customer service, shared the true story with interested customers. She explained that Ashley was an honest person who'd been wronged, but Mrs. Eleanor was trying to make things right. Jimmy kept coming by the restaurant, now welcomed warmly by all the staff. Margie discovered that the boy wasn't just hungry, but also needed medical care. His grandmother, Mrs. Margaret Jones, 78 years old, was ill and couldn't properly care for her grandson. The boy's situation deeply moved Mrs. Eleanor Thompson, who decided to visit them at the boarding house where they lived. What she found shocked her: a tiny room with poor hygiene, where a frail elderly woman was trying to raise a boy alone. Mrs. Margaret explained that Jimmy was the son of her only daughter, who had left years ago in search of a better life and never returned. The elderly woman survived on a small pension and relied on neighbors to help care for her grandson when her health worsened. Touched by their plight, Mrs. Eleanor offered immediate help. She arranged medical care for Mrs. Margaret and ensured Jimmy had proper meals every day. She also secured a spot at a nearby school for the boy, who had been out of school for months. Word of Mrs. Eleanor's actions reached Ashley through Margie, who kept in touch with her former co-worker. The waitress was deeply impressed by the owner's generosity and began reconsidering her decision about returning to the restaurant. Kaylee and Sophie, Ashley's daughters, also influenced their mother's choice. They had followed the whole situation and saw how much their mother had suffered from the injustice. When they learned of Mrs. Eleanor's offer, the girls encouraged Ashley to accept. "Mom, you always taught us to help those in need," Kaylee said. "Now you have the chance to do it on a bigger scale, and Mrs. Eleanor seems like a truly good person." Sophie, though younger, also gave her opinion. "I liked that lady. She has kind eyes just like Grandma's." The memory of Ashley's mother, who had passed away years earlier, touched her heart deeply. After a week of reflection, Ashley made her decision. She called Mrs. Eleanor and accepted the offer, but with a few conditions. She wanted the freedom to implement her ideas for improving service and assurance that the social program would truly be put into practice. Mrs. Eleanor agreed to all the terms and even made an additional offer. She would support Ashley in pursuing a business administration degree in the evenings. The owner believed education was key to personal and professional growth. Ashley's return to the restaurant was emotional. The staff welcomed her with applause, and many customers made a point of greeting her personally. Jimmy was there, in clean clothes and a wide grin, running to hug her. In the first few days, Ashley worked hard to reorganize service and implement the improvements she had planned. She created a training system for employees, improved communication between the kitchen and dining area, and developed more personalized service for regular customers. The social program also began taking shape. Every day after closing, unsold meals were carefully packaged and distributed to those in need who had registered for the program. The initiative was named Community Table. The positive response was immediate. Local newspapers covered the story, highlighting the restaurant's management shift and the social work being done. Social media buzz grew, with people sharing positive stories about the establishment. Richard, seeing the restaurant's rising popularity, grew even angrier. He tried spreading rumors about food quality and hygiene, but his attempts were easily disproven by satisfied customers and inspections that always approved the restaurant. The situation worsened for the former manager when he tried to find work at other restaurants in the area. His reputation had been tarnished, and the owners, knowing his history, were reluctant to hire him. The restaurant scene in San Diego was small, and news traveled fast. Desperate, Richard Wilson decided to sue Mrs. Eleanor Thompson for wrongful termination, claiming the accusations against him were false and defamatory. He hired a lawyer who promised a substantial settlement, arguing that the owner had acted rashly. The lawsuit caused some concern for Mrs. Eleanor, but she was prepared. She had all the evidence of Richard's misconduct, including forged documents and recorded conversations. Her lawyer, Mr. Thomas Baker, was confident they would win. During the trial, unexpected witnesses came forward. Former employees from other restaurants where Richard had worked shared similar experiences. Suppliers also testified about his corrupt practices. Margie was one of the key witnesses in Mrs. Eleanor's favor. With her 15 years of experience at the restaurant, she could contrast the work environment before and after Richard's arrival. Her testimony was crucial in showing the negative changes he had brought. Ashley Johnson was also called to testify. Though nervous at first, she clearly explained the events that led to her firing and how humiliated she had felt in front of customers. Her testimony even moved the judge, who seemed sympathetic to her situation. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us as we're just starting out. Now, back to the story. The trial dragged on for months, creating tension at the restaurant. Some customers hesitated to visit during the hearings, afraid of getting caught up in the controversy. Mrs. Eleanor kept everyone updated on the case's progress, and her transparency was appreciated by loyal patrons. During this time, something unexpected happened. Jimmy started showing strange symptoms, trouble focusing at school, frequent headaches, and loss of appetite. Mrs. Margaret Jones, already frail, didn't know what to do. Ashley took the boy to the doctor, where they discovered he was suffering from post-traumatic stress due to all the changes in his life. The psychologist explained that children in vulnerable situations are more sensitive to disruptions in their environment, even positive ones. The discovery mobilized the entire restaurant community. Mrs. Eleanor arranged free counseling for Jimmy, while Ashley spent extra time helping him with homework. Margie made his favorite dishes to encourage his appetite. Gradually, with all the support, Jimmy began to recover. His smile returned and he started helping at the restaurant after school, setting tables and assisting with the social program's meal distribution. This routine gave him a sense of purpose and belonging. Mrs. Margaret also benefited from the support. With proper medical care and a caregiver Mrs. Eleanor arranged, her health improved significantly. The elderly woman began visiting the restaurant regularly, sewing small repairs on the staff uniforms as a way to repay their kindness. The trial finally came to an end. The judge ruled in Mrs. Eleanor's favor, agreeing that Richard's firing was justified by the evidence presented. Not only did the former manager lose the case, but he was also ordered to pay court fees and a fine for filing a false claim. The legal victory brought immense relief to the entire restaurant team. Ashley organized a small celebration to mark the occasion, inviting all the staff and their families. It was a special evening where stories were shared and bonds were strengthened. During the celebration, Mrs. Eleanor made a surprising announcement. She revealed her intention to expand the social program by partnering with local schools to provide free meals for underprivileged students. Ashley would be responsible for coordinating this new initiative. The proposal excited everyone present. Jason suggested creating a delivery system for those who couldn't make it to the restaurant. Margie proposed basic cooking classes for low-income families, teaching them how to prepare nutritious meals with limited resources. Ideas kept multiplying, and soon what had started as a simple leftover distribution program grew into a comprehensive social project. Mrs. Eleanor was radiant, seeing how her vision was expanding beyond her initial expectations. Richard, defeated in court and with his reputation ruined, disappeared from town for a few months. Many thought he had given up causing trouble, but they were wrong. The man was planning one last attempt at revenge. He returned with a proposal for a group of out-of-town investors, offering information about the impending failure of Homestead Kitchen. He argued that the restaurant was spending too much money on social programs and would soon go bankrupt, making it a cheap investment opportunity. The investors, interested in the restaurant's prime location, sent representatives to assess the situation. They arrived expecting to find a struggling business, but instead encountered a thriving establishment with loyal customers. Mrs. Eleanor received the investors politely, but made it clear the restaurant was not for sale. She explained that Homestead Kitchen was more than just a business to her. It was a family legacy and a community hub. The representatives were impressed by the organization of the place and the dedication of the staff. One of them, Mr. Frank Anderson, remarked that he rarely saw such a well-structured operation with such motivated employees. When they learned the truth behind Richard's misleading information, the investors were outraged at the attempt to deceive them. Mr. Frank warned Mrs. Eleanor about the former manager's malicious intentions and suggested she take legal action against him. Mrs. Eleanor decided not to sue Richard, but made it clear through her lawyers that any further attempts to harm the restaurant would be met with the full force of the law. The message was understood, and Richard finally gave up his schemes. With peace restored, the restaurant entered a new phase of growth. The community table program expanded its activities, serving not only the homeless, but also struggling families in the area. Partnerships with local organizations broadened the initiative's reach. Ashley began studying business administration, balancing her studies with work. Her daughters, proud of their mother, helped by studying with her and taking care of school supplies. Kaylee, now a teenager, expressed interest in pursuing a career in the culinary field. Jimmy, now fully recovered, became something of a restaurant mascot. Regular customers knew him by name and always asked about his studies. The boy was doing well in school and dreamed of becoming a chef when he grew up. Mrs. Margaret Jones found a new purpose in life by helping with the social program. Her life experience and wisdom were valued by everyone. She became a maternal figure for many of the program's beneficiaries, offering not just food, but also advice and emotional support. The restaurant also became a gathering place for the local community. Mrs. Eleanor Thompson created a space where people could leave resumes for job opportunities, service announcements, and requests for help. The community mural became an important tool for connecting neighbors. The transformation of Homestead Kitchen caught the attention of national media. A television network did a special feature on the social program and Ashley Johnson's story of resilience. The story had a huge impact, inspiring other business owners to implement similar initiatives. With the national spotlight, the restaurant began receiving visits from people in other cities who wanted to see the project firsthand. Mrs. Eleanor and Ashley started getting invitations to speak about corporate social responsibility and people-centered management. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. Success brought new challenges. Demand for the social program grew beyond the restaurant's capacity, and stricter criteria had to be established for assistance. This decision drew some criticism from those who were excluded. Ashley worked hard to find creative solutions. She partnered with other local restaurants to expand the food distribution network. She also created a volunteer system where community members could contribute their time and resources. Managing the social program became so complex that Mrs. Eleanor decided to formalize it as a separate non-profit organization from the restaurant. Ashley was invited to take the helm of the new entity, the Community Table Foundation. The creation of the foundation marked a new chapter in Ashley's life. She now split her time between running the restaurant and coordinating social programs. It was a huge challenge, but one that fulfilled her deeply. A year after her humiliating firing, Ashley was honored by the San Diego City Council for her social work. The ceremony was emotional, with all the people who had supported her during her journey in attendance. Mrs. Eleanor, now 74, began thinking about succession. She watched Ashley with admiration and pride, seeing in her not just a capable employee, but a true partner in keeping the restaurant's spirit alive. During a private conversation, Mrs. Eleanor revealed to Ashley that she had no direct heirs and considered the restaurant her greatest legacy. She expressed her wish for Ashley to gradually take over ownership, ensuring the continuation of the values they both held dear. The proposal left Ashley deeply moved and a little terrified. Taking ownership of a traditional restaurant was a dream she had never dared to have, but it also meant an immense responsibility to the community and to Mrs. Eleanor's memory. After much reflection and discussions with her family, Ashley accepted the offer. A gradual transition plan was set up, where she would take on more responsibilities over time, until becoming the full owner in 5 years. The announcement of the succession was met with enthusiasm by staff and customers. Everyone knew Ashley's dedication and trusted the restaurant was in good hands. Margie joked that she'd finally have a boss who understood the daily struggles. Richard Wilson heard the news through acquaintances and was furious to see the woman he once dismissed as a mere waitress now in a position he had always coveted. His bitterness consumed him, but he no longer had any power to interfere in their lives. In truth, life had taught Richard some hard lessons. Unable to find work in the restaurant industry, he had to accept positions in other sectors, always with lower pay and reduced responsibilities. His past arrogance gave way to a humility forced by circumstances. One day, surprisingly, Richard appeared at the door of Homestead Kitchen. He looked visibly worn down, dressed in simple clothes with tired eyes. He asked to speak with Ashley, who received him politely but kept her distance. The man who had once publicly humiliated her stood there, asking for a job opportunity. He explained he had lost his apartment, his wife had left him, and he was facing serious financial difficulties. Ashley listened in silence, processing the irony of the situation. Richard admitted he had made mistakes in the past and understood if she didn't want to help him. But he begged for a chance to start over, promising he had learned from his errors and would work in any role, even the simplest one. Ashley asked for time to think and discuss the situation with Mrs. Eleanor Thompson. The owner, with her life wisdom, suggested that giving the former manager an opportunity could be a powerful example of forgiveness and redemption. After much reflection, Ashley decided to offer Richard a position as a kitchen assistant, with a basic salary and a 3-month probation period. The conditions were clear. Any sign of inappropriate behavior would result in immediate dismissal. Richard accepted the terms humbly. In the first few days, his discomfort in occupying a subordinate role where he once held authority was evident, but necessity forced him to swallow his pride and perform his duties diligently. Margie, who had been one of his past victims, was assigned to supervise him. She treated him professionally, but made it clear she wouldn't tolerate any disrespect. Richard, in turn, made an effort to be cooperative and respectful. Gradually, his presence in the restaurant stopped causing tension. He seemed genuinely transformed by the experience of loss and humiliation he had endured. Regular customers who recognized him were surprised to see him in such a different position. Jimmy, now 9 years old and more mature, observed Richard with curiosity. One day the boy asked Ashley why she had given a chance to the man who had treated her poorly. Her answer became a life lesson for all who heard it. "Jimmy, when we hold on to grudges in our hearts, the ones who suffer the most are ourselves. Giving someone who made mistakes a second chance doesn't mean forgetting what happened, but choosing to be better than those who hurt us." Those words reached Richard's ears, and he was moved by the generosity of the woman he had wronged. For the first time in a long while, he felt something beyond bitterness and resentment. He felt gratitude. 3 months later, when his probation ended, Richard had proven himself a dedicated and respectful employee. Ashley decided to hire him permanently, but made it clear his continued employment depended on his ongoing behavior. Richard's transformation became an example within the restaurant. Younger employees learned about second chances and redemption through his story. He himself began advising co-workers on the importance of humility and respect in the workplace. Mrs. Eleanor, watching this evolution, felt proud of the woman Ashley had become. Her ability to lead with compassion while remaining firm showed the restaurant would be safe in her hands. The Community Table Foundation also grew quickly. Beyond meal distribution, it offered vocational training, psychological support, and legal aid for vulnerable individuals. Ashley coordinated all of this while finishing her degree. Kaylee, now 13 years old, began volunteering at the foundation during her school breaks. Sophie, 8 years old, loved helping Jimmy with his homework. The families grew very close, forming a strong support network. Mrs. Margaret Jones, with her health stabilized, became like a grandmother to Ashley Johnson's daughters. The girls spent entire afternoons listening to her stories and learning traditional recipes. This intergenerational bond enriched everyone's lives. The restaurant also underwent renovations to better accommodate its social activities. A dedicated space was created for the foundation's programs, complete with computers for IT courses and a community library. Mrs. Eleanor Thompson invested her personal savings into these improvements. The story of Homestead Kitchen reached the ears of a television producer who wanted to make a documentary about corporate social initiatives. Ashley and Mrs. Eleanor agreed to participate, seeing it as a chance to inspire other business owners. Filming lasted several weeks, capturing the daily life of the restaurant and the foundation. Richard Wilson was also interviewed, sharing his personal and professional transformation. His testimony became one of the most moving parts of the documentary. When the documentary aired nationally, the impact was immense. Hundreds of business owners reached out, eager to learn how to implement similar programs. Ashley began consulting for other establishments interested in social responsibility. The success brought tempting offers. A major restaurant chain offered $1 million deal to buy the brand and replicate the concept in other cities. Mrs. Eleanor and Ashley didn't even consider the proposal, knowing it would completely change the heart of their project. End of story. Now tell us what you thought of this story of resilience and forgiveness. Do you believe Ashley made the right choice by giving Richard a second chance? Share your honest thoughts in the comments. Your feedback helps us create more inspiring stories for you. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.